For some context, I'm a 32-year-old female, and this happened to me when I was about 25. I work full-time as a researcher at a university, which is where these encounters took place. I'm not a professor or anything, and because of my age at the time, I could have easily been mistaken for just another student wandering around campus. On some days, when the weather is nice, I would prefer to spend my lunch hour strolling outside around the university grounds or sitting underneath a shady tree on a bench. I just liked enjoying the time I wasn't sitting in a cramped corner of a lab. On one of these days, I was sitting on a bench, taking in the fresh air, and a student walking by asked if he could sit next to me. I'm a pretty shy and awkward kind of person, so even though I really would have preferred sitting alone, I said sure. He initiated simple conversation, to which I obliged, but being careful to not be too forthcoming. He mentioned he had seen which building I came from, which slightly alarmed me given I had never seen this person before in my life. But I pushed the thought from my mind. After all, the weather had been decent lately, and I had been spending nearly all of my lunches outside for the past week. He asked if I was in that building studying, to which I told him that I was not a student, but that I worked there. He told me he was an engineering major, and then followed up with asking me out to coffee sometime. I apologized and told him that I had a boyfriend and would have to decline. We parted ways after that, and I assumed I would probably not see him around again. About a week or two went by, and I was spending another lunch hour outside on campus, sitting on a different bench somewhere. Seemingly out of nowhere, the same man from before asked if he could sit next to me again. Admittedly, I don't remember what he started talking to me about. My mind was reeling, and I was rather uncomfortable having to potentially turn this guy down again. Sure enough, he asked me again if we could go out for a coffee sometime. I apologized and reminded him that I had a boyfriend, and again, he left after that. I was feeling super anxious now, but it still hadn't reached a level where I felt I had to be too concerned. A few days later, I had finished work and was leaving the building to walk to where I had parked my car. The university charges a fortune for parking passes, even if you're employed by them, so I had always opted for free street parking about a 10-minute walk away from campus. My walking route would take me down several quiet residential streets with minimal car traffic. Even pedestrian traffic was sparse on the busiest of days. It wasn't until I was about halfway to my car, down on one of those quiet back streets, that I noticed someone walking on the side of the street. I saw them in my peripheral vision and didn't want to flat out turn around to stare at them. It wasn't uncommon to see anyone else by any means. I just try to be aware of my surroundings, especially when walking alone. I had a few turns coming up anyway, and the chance they would be going the same way as me was slim. But they did. They made all the turns I did, still walking a few steps behind. I didn't want to look at whoever this was. I didn't want them to know that I was aware of what I thought they were doing. I quickened my pace. They quickened to keep up with me. And that was the moment I panicked, the moment I was sure that they were indeed following me. After that, I started a full-out jog and was nearly at my car, but it was crossing the street that worried me the most. I would have to stop and wait a good minute or so before it was clear enough to cross, and by then, they would catch up with me. But it was as if the stars aligned. As soon as I made it to the street, I was able to cross. I booked it as fast as I could, finally turning around once I had made it to look and yell at who had been pursuing me. It was him. It was the engineering student who I had turned down for coffee. "Stop following me," I yelled at him from across the busy street. "Can I just talk to you?" he yelled back. I didn't even answer him. I mean, the answer should have been obvious from the start. And I was certainly never going to give my time to anyone who had just followed and then chased me for about 1 kilometer. I was so determined to get the hell out of there that I didn't even care if he saw which car was mine. Luckily, he had given up on following me. I got home and broke down. I know worse things had happened to other people, no doubt, and I wasn't harmed, fortunately, but I was shook. I had some anxiety walking to and from work after that. It wasn't long before a coworker and I would walk most of the distance back to our cars together after work. I even changed where I started parking for a bit. A few weeks had passed since the incident, and I had not seen him around campus at all. I had started spending my lunches in the lab instead of outside, but occasionally, I would go to the student center to buy lunch instead. This one particular day, the food court in the student center was packed, almost shoulder to shoulder. I was standing in line at a burger stall, and I heard a guy try and get someone's attention through the crowd. I look up, and it's him again, waving to me and trying to make his way through the crowd. I panicked, and even though, as I said before, I'm terribly shy, I started a scene and yelled to him to leave me the fuck alone. His face dropped instantly as people stared at us, and he slinked back into the sea of students. My heart was racing, pounding, and I was shaking. I don't even remember if I ended up getting food after that. I went back to work, and from then on was even more focused on my surroundings than I ever was before. It's been 5 or 6 years since then now, and I still work at the university. But I am so relieved to say I never saw him again after the food court, and haven't had any other harrowing accounts on campus. I am still diligent about being aware of my surroundings, especially when I have to walk to and from campus alone. I never asked the guy's name, so I couldn't even report an incident to campus police or anything. All in all, I'm just glad I never saw him again, and I can only hope he never did this to any other girl before or after me.